A common bit of foolishness surrounds making out like there's a contradiction in the women fleeing from the tomb of Jesus. Some people don't put much thought into what it must have been like on that incredible morning. Well, of course they don't. They don't believe it ever happened to begin with. Well, let's stop and look at this a little more closely. Here I've lined up the three gospel accounts that seem to be contrary: Matthew 28, Mark 16, and Luke 24. Matthew and Luke tell us that the women went and reported these things, and Mark tells us that they didn't. So there's no problem with Matthew and Luke here, since they offer the same story. But what are we to think about Mark's account? When we read on in Mark's account, and yes, I do not believe Mark originally ended his gospel with women running away in terror and telling no one. I believe the entire chapter belongs there. But reading on, we read about Mary Magdalene's experience. What's interesting is really not so much that she sees Jesus, but that no one believes her when she runs and reports it. In Luke 24:11, Luke tells us that these words appeared to them, the disciples, as nonsense, and they would not believe them. Notice the word them. Mary is with the other women when it is told. John makes it clear that Mary ran to tell Peter and John, leaving the other women at the tomb. Now we know that no two people react the same under the same stress, and it's clear that these women reacted differently. It becomes very clear that this was a morning of great excitement and fear. After all, the women are thinking the body of Jesus has been moved. We read of that in John 20 and verse 13. But here's my scenario for the events of that morning. I'm sure there are other ways to explain what seems to be a discrepancy in Mark, but this is what I see. The women come to the tomb, as all four Gospels tell us, but Mary quickly runs to the disciples when she sees the tomb is opened. While she runs to tell the news, the other women see the angels who tell them that Jesus is risen. They flee in fear and would have told the disciples, but who would believe them? They stop short of doing so, and they discuss among themselves what they really ought to do. Meanwhile, Mary has come back to the tomb with Peter and John, and when they have left, Jesus appears to her. As she runs to take word, she meets the other women, and Jesus now appears to all of them. His first words are, "Do not be afraid, but take word to my brethren." And that's in Matthew 28:10. With the added assurance of his appearance, they now end up going to tell the disciples, who don't believe them. The difference in Mark is his emphasis on the fear of that morning. One of those little extra details, like the young man in the garden wearing only a sheet and fleeing naked when the guard tries to apprehend him. This is the power of four different accounts, emphasizing four different but harmonious points of view. The emotions should rush through our minds as we read, and we should feel that frenzy, fear, and excitement. Sadly, some can't let go of their animosity towards Scripture long enough to feel anything worthwhile. Sadly, dead flies are in their perfume.